Bioweapons labs in Ukraine were a QAnon conspiracy theory. Well, now thanks to Marco Rubio and Victoria Nuland, we know that they're real. But we still need a lot more details, and right now we're getting them from the Russians. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, there's evidence that researchers in the Ukraine were working on creating special viruses that could be used to target specific ethnic groups as weapons of war or as part of a wider depopulation agenda. Well, now that doesn't mean that everything that Russia is saying is true. They're in a war, and countries at war say all kinds of untrue things. Just look at Ukraine or at our own military. But keep this in mind, until a few weeks ago, our leaders were denying that the biolabs even existed. Dr. Ariana Love says that she already knows what's really going on with these bioweapons labs, and she says that it's more horrifying than you could ever imagine. Dr. Love joins us now. So what's really going on with these labs? Is that accurate information, in your opinion, coming out of Russia?
Yeah, absolutely. Russian reports have historically been credible. It's like they're old school. So as long as I've been a journalist for 11 years, they are credible. Russia's military operation in Ukraine, it's all for the denazification and demilitarization of the country, as well as to seize control and destroy and expose the US bioweapons labs to the world. So Russia is liberating the Ukrainian people after 8 years of genocide and ethnic cleansing. On the other side is the US deep state and NATO allies who have been using Ukraine for the manufacturing and exportation of biological weapons for this COVID-19 democide. Russia exposed that the US government, DoD, and NATO partners funded and operated 30 biolabs in Ukraine under COVID-19 prevention program. But in actuality, they were producing bioweapons that are being used in this vaccine holocaust.
Where's the proof of that? I mean, where is the proof of that?
I'm going to get into it. I actually
Okay.
I found evidence. So Russia revealed 145 species of bioweapons and they have been studied in Ukraine, and 2 of them are crossing into Russia. This is according to Russian military reports. Parasites and insect vectors that transmit severe infectious diseases to humans were being smuggled out of Ukraine, and the biosamples were being transferred abroad from a biolab in Kharkov. So routes into Europe were already being mapped, and they were working on dangerous coronavirus specimens and how to spread it among populations. This was revealed by the Russians. So classified documents captured by the Russians reveal the paper trail between Ukrainian biolabs and the Doherty Institute in Australia. So the Victorian Infectious Diseases Laboratory in Melbourne were caught importing blood serum from Ukrainian biolabs. There's 350 cryo containers with samples of blood at the Australian Institute that were being used under the pretense of antibody research. So Aussie Cossack also reported that Australian mercenaries have been spotted in Ukraine in the city of Zhytomyr, 150 kilometers west of Kiev. Now, the former president, Barack Obama himself had authorized the construction of these biolabs in Ukraine for creating level 3 dangerous pathogens in 2005. It was the Obama-Biden regime that established the coup d'etat in Kiev. The Azov battalion Nazis that are wreaking havoc in Ukraine were funded by Jewish oligarch billionaires with dual nationality to Israel, such as Igor Kolomoisky. Azov Nazis were supplied with Tavor rifles by the Israeli state. The neo-Nazis were able to officially integrate into the National Guard of Ukraine in 2014. Former U.S. Marine Corps officer Scott Ritter told George Galloway the first troops to be trained by U.S. and British soldiers were the neo-Nazi Azov battalion. So the Nazis violently overthrew the legitimate president of Ukraine and forced their way into the government. The Zelensky puppet regime and the militarized Nazis have been committing war crimes, atrocities, and targeting Russian Christian Ukrainians ever since. And those are the majority of Ukrainians are Russian Christian.
So what you're saying is that the United States, specifically, actually not the United States, bad actors inside of the United States, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, along with the State Department and the CIA, conducted a violent overthrow of a democratically elected government that was elected in 2014. Both sides agreed that the vote was fair. They staged BLM-style riots. They practiced the same meddling and election theft as they implemented here, all of the PSYOPs included. so that they could develop bioweapons to target Christians. So Barack Obama wants to target Christians. Does that sound like a huge conspiracy to anybody? I think not. And so this person who allegedly was not even born here, and I believe that more and more. I mean, the truth is the guy was born in Kenya. He should have never been the president here anyways. He was selected and installed here. These people are selecting and installing governments worldwide to complete their agenda. This is Soros's war, is what this is. And so now there's even more coming out. Continue, because I just want to break this all down so that people can understand. This is not something that just is popping up with Vladimir Putin. This is instigated at the hands of our State Department, corrupt bad actors inside of the global cabal and the deep state here in the United States. From the very beginning, I said, if you want to blame anybody for this war, look no further than the United States deep state. And that's accurate. That has been vindicated, and it continues. More and more evidence continues to pour out that this is Soros's war, period. Go ahead, continue.
Absolutely. And the poor Ukrainians have been suffering for years. It is a genocide. The US government released documents in 2020 admitting that the biolabs in Ukraine are for vaccine development. And the US Department of State had control over everything that happened in those labs. Russia revealed that the US was developing plague, anthrax, cholera, Ebola, filoviruses, and much, much more. Ebola is in the Johnson & Johnson and Sinovac patents. The filovirus is used in Moderna. So it's clear that the illegal pathogens from these biolabs have been used to inoculate the world's population for this democide. We should all be thanking Russia for exposing this to the world and destroying those labs. Russia also mentioned that the H1N1 and the H5N1 and the H1N1 were also being produced in those labs. The H1N1 induces smallpox. And I found also an mRNA nanotechnology vaccine patent for cattle using the H5N1 and the H1N1 and the deadly Brucella bacteria. So these bioweapons made in Ukraine are also being used to poison and genetically modify our food supply. Journalist Dilyana Gatanzeva reported that the Pentagon unleashed deadly antibiotic-resistant bacteria on the local civilian population and on Allied troops, according to leaked documents. So the Pentagon was experimenting on 4,400 soldiers in Ukraine and another 1,000 soldiers in Georgia. And the documents read that these deaths should be reported to the US government. So the US personnel in these biolabs were given diplomatic immunity, although they are not diplomats, and they are indemnified from the deaths and injuries caused to the local population. There were 13 lethal bacteria being tested on troops and civilians in Ukraine. The Bacillus anthracis, that's anthrax. It can be disseminated by aerial spraying. And I found a patent with a method for removing the plasma DNA from the Bacillus anthracis bacteria using CRISPR-Cas9 system, and it's owned by China. So they are using mycoplasmas as bioweapons. Brucella is another deadly bacteria that was cultivated. In the 1950s, the US military developed artillery shells and bombs armed with the bacterium that causes a debilitating flu-like disease in humans. This is the Brucella. In 2001, the US and DARPA officially sequenced the Brucella suis genome and began applying it to vaccines. So the US Army likes to use this pathogen because they're able to debilitate people without killing them. So being infected with the brucellosis is like having the flu like 10 times, though it's not life-threatening unless you have some other condition. And this sounds very much like COVID-19.
100%.
There was the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. It has a 40% lethality. Then a couple other bacteria that you only need 10 of them to make you sick. And the US, one was the Francisella tularensis. The US military was supposed to have disposed of this bacteria in 1973 because it has up to a 60% lethality, but the US was continuing to weaponize it in Ukraine. So parasites, worms, and more deadly bacteria that cause Lyme disease, also chronic brain diseases, sounds like prion, and many, many more things were being manufactured there. But this is the most chilling thing of all, Stu. They were targeting ethnic groups. So one of the things they were doing in these biolabs was they figured out a way to selectively target specific ethnic groups. so they can make it these bioweapons more lethal or less lethal to ethnic groups. There was a study released in December of last year, which reveals that ethnic groups are being the most. It reveals what ethnic groups are being the most genetically modified with this mRNA weaponry, and it happens to be Europeans. And European South Asians are the most targeted group, then Africans. And there are two genetic types that are completely immune to this bioweapon, and that is the K26R genetic type and also the Ashkenazi Jews. They are completely immune to genetic modification. So this is some very chilling evidence.
Wow. And you know, none of it is hard to believe. I'll be called a Putin sympathizer, whatever. We're spreading Russian disinformation. Well, I guess I've probably been doing that since I pointed out that the COVID was fake and that it was chimerically engineered and that it came out of a bioweapons lab in Wuhan, China, all of which nobody can deny anymore. The bioweapon shots, not only are they not effective, they have negative efficacy. Not only are they not safe, they are extremely dangerous and in many cases deadly. They have caused more deaths than any other shot, all of them combined in just 11 months. Nobody wants to mention it at all. The media is completely dishonest, and the war is all a distraction away from all of this. We cooked up this war by giving weapons to two different groups in Ukraine and allowing them to fight back and forth, claiming that it was the Russian army fighting against the Ukrainians. If Vladimir Putin wanted to crush Ukraine, it would take him about 2 hours or less. He would completely blow Ukraine off the face of the map if he wanted to. He's got 1.4 million or 1.014 million active duty troops, another 2 million in reserves, as compared to 170,000 in Ukraine. If he wanted to destroy them, Dr. Love, he could absolutely do it. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And this all goes back to the dishonest media. False flags, what's happening outside